Summer 1492. After 3 months at sea, the Santa Maria, the Pinta and the Nina anchor off the Bahamas. Europe has discovered the Americas. What happens next? Conquest and colonization by settlers who remake America in their image. They advanced and destroyed. But there is another story about the animals and plants they brought here. And what they found here. And how the Americas were completely transformed. It all began 500 years ago. Christopher Columbus left his home in Italy to fight for his vision. He aimed to sail west to the riches of Asia. This is an era of discovery and lust for expansion, and it all began with the ambition of a queen. In Europe, the nobles have grown wealthy by trading with the East. Spices and gold, gemstones and silk are the most lucrative goods. But Europeans have lost the Silk Road to the Turks, and foreign trade is in decline. The wealth of kings is in danger. Isabella, Queen of Spain, is desperate to find new routes to India. And she has a plan.
Let him in.
This is the most powerful woman in Europe, a continent of expanding horizons filled with competitive and inventive souls. For 500 years, they have been building castles, palaces, centers of trade. Kings and popes have raised armies to fight each other and their enemies on Europe's borders. Nowhere else are rivalries so intense, gold fever so widespread, religious fervor and business expertise as tightly wound as in Europe in 1491. Ideas are advancing. Curiosity and the thirst for power push Europe's limits. They're seeking riches and land, heading towards the frontiers of their world. But no one can guess that far beyond the end of that world lies another, of which they know nothing. The Amazon is a crowded place. The Andes cradle a vast empire ruled by powerful god-kings. Mesoamerica may be the most densely populated place on Earth, home to the most imposing civilizations on the continent. And the Atlantic coast is filled with villages and fields. Along the rivers, great cities are built around monumental plazas and giant earthen mounds. It is an ancient world, inhabited by hunters and gatherers, fishermen and farmers, kings, slaves and soldiers. Down amongst the trees, where the Missouri, Illinois, and Mississippi rivers merge, in what is today the state of Illinois, lies one of the most fertile zones of North America. It's home to one of the largest civilizations in the continent. The Mississippians, mound builders from the Great Lakes to Florida, flourishing in the year 1150. The first explorers thought these great mounds were natural, carved by retreating glaciers. Now we know that they were the centerpieces of cities, cities like Cahokia, busy trading posts of earth and wood with populations of thousands of people. No one knows what they called themselves or what language they spoke. But we do know why they were successful. The Mississippians are farmers. Their staple crop is fuel for the ever-growing population. It is a plant native to the Americas, unknown to the rest of the world. Once they learned to grow it, they could stay in one place. This simple diet translated straight into the energy to build a civilization. But corn is not a blessing from nature, nor a gift of the gods. This crop is the outcome of man's first feat of selective breeding. Scientists realized relatively recently that the ability to grow corn is a key to high cultures in the Americas.
The staple crop in North America was corn. 6,000 years ago, ears of corn were only about as long as a person's thumb, and they were barely edible. It took thousands of years to develop a more nourishing and larger hybrid, and also a hybrid that could grow in cooler climates outside of Mesoamerica. And it wasn't until about 1,100 years ago that corn reached the Mississippi River Valley.
Corn is the result of the domestication of the wild teosinte grass. Early Americans started with this spindly stalk. And over the centuries, they developed it into today's giant cob. Archaeologists and biologists are still debating how corn was achieved out of a tiny Mexican wildgrass. Corn is one of the keys to understanding American civilization. Wherever it flourishes, so do great cultures. Yet the greatest American empire of them all is found where corn cannot grow, high in the Andes. The Inca Empire stretches nearly 2,500 miles down the west coast of South America. Incas built palaces, storehouses, and castles in the towering mountains. In their realm of 6 million people, they rely on manpower to transport stones. They have neither beasts of burden nor the wheel. And the energy for that is provided by another amazing foodstuff. Incas are famed for their gold, but their true treasure is less glamorous. A tuber native to America and unknown in Europe, cultivated here 8,000 years ago in the region around Lake Titicaca in today's Peru and Bolivia, at an altitude of 4,000 meters. What is now a staple food in Europe was a South American invention. By the year 1491, the Inca grow hundreds of varieties, domesticated from wild ancestors, some poisonous, some even carnivorous. 1,000 years ago, in one city alone, 30,000 tons of potatoes were produced every year. They preserved the tubers by mashing them into a substance called chuño. After harvest, potatoes are spread on straw and left out to freeze at night. During the day, they're exposed to the sun. Trampling them eliminates water and allows them to dry. Chuño can be stored for 10 years, an excellent insurance against possible crop failures. The Inca carved step-like terraces into the mountainsides to stop the soil eroding and create a flat surface for their crops. Terraces absorb more sunlight than steep slopes, so potatoes can grow at the highest altitudes. And all this is achieved by manpower alone, using wooden tools. In North and South America in 1491, farmers grow corn and potatoes for 100 million people. There's another continent across the ocean where 100 million more people survive growing very different food, in a very different way. In this same year of 1491, Europeans have to grow food for a similar number of people in 1/10 of the space. Europe is a busy and crowded continent. People here lack land, and what they work on is not even theirs. Most of them are farmers. Europe is filled with fields owned by the nobles or the church, tilled by peasants. Their main diet is bread and porridge, both made from grains. They plant rye or wheat in winter, oats or barley in the spring, and every third year, the field lies fallow to regenerate. They know how to use wind and water for power. It is heavier work, with higher yields in a smaller space. It is an agricultural revolution, and it allows the European population to thrive. And for that, one more element is essential.
Es gibt zwei große Unterschiede. Der erste, die europäische
You see, old European agriculture was based on grains, wheat, rye, while old American agriculture was based on corn. But another difference is even more important. European agriculture originated in a combination of farming and raising livestock. That was not the case in America. That gave European agriculture a great advantage. First, the fertility of the soil was renewed through cow dung, and secondly, the livestock needed pastures, and that protected ecological reserves.
Domesticated animals, they make all the difference. America has no cattle, no horses or pigs, no sheep, mules, goats or hens. European horses are beasts of burden. They can pull plows. And cattle provide meat, fur and hides. The domestic pig is a chief source of meat and leather. Like the sheep, that needs no stable and finds its own food. Even a mule can pull a cart. And cows give them milk, butter and cheese. Europeans are breeding ever more productive animals. But it's not only people that domesticate animals. By 1491, the Big Five, horses, cattle, goats, pigs, and sheep, have domesticated the European landscape. They are essential to Europe's prosperity. And none of these are known to North or South America. For Inca farmers in the Andes, their chief source of transport and meat is the llama. This is the biggest domestic mammal in the Americas. The llamas also offer dung for the soil and hides for clothes. But you can't milk or ride them, and the animals can't pull a plow, so they're no good for fighting or for traveling. But their wool is one of the best gifts. It's warmer and lighter than sheep's wool, and produces a greater yield. They use bronze knives to shear them. The second principal domesticated animal of the Americas is even smaller. For the Aztecs, in today's Mexico and Guatemala, the turkey is so important that they dedicated 2 religious festivals to it. Native Americans have so few domesticated animals because the biggest native mammals in the Americas have long since died out.
At the end of the last ice age, the megafauna in the Americas, the giant bison and the mastodons, went extinct. And the reasons for that are probably twofold. First of all, as the ice age was ending, the climate became much hotter and drier, and this killed the vegetation that these very large animals depended on. Secondly, the arrival of hunters into North America, crossed over the Bering Strait land bridge from Asia, coincided with the extinction of these animals. And very likely these hunters went after these large animals who were slow and had a lot of meat. And what this left in North America were animals such as bison, deer, and antelope that are not suited to domestication.
The animals that remain have one thing in abundance: space. From the glaciers of the Arctic North to the Great Plains of today's Midwest, gigantic herds thunder across North America in search of food. There is room for antelopes and for caribou. And there is room for bison. Room for the giant grizzly. And in the sky above, for flocks of birds that block out the sun. Billions of passenger pigeons, ducks, and geese, from horizon to horizon. In 1491, they are hunted by hundreds of Native American tribes, village dwellers in the forests of the Northeast and nomads on the plains. These civilizations develop new methods to guarantee their meat supply. They can't domesticate these animals, so they find a way of making their prey come to them. When they notice that grass grows better after being burnt by lightning strikes, they start to burn the prairies themselves. Many tribes such as the Sioux, Cheyenne, Comanche, Shoshone or Blackfoot burn the central plains and the prairies to increase their spread. Burning the undergrowth in the fall keeps the forest open and park-like and makes hunting easier. Burning the prairie creates lush grassland. And the prairies cover 20 million square kilometers. The new rich pastures will lure and increase the numbers of herbivores, as well as the predators that feed on them.
America in 1492 was not a pristine wilderness. That's a romantic myth. It was in many ways a managed landscape. Natives regularly burned the forests and the prairie in order to attract game.
With this technique, nomadic Central Plains Indians even lure the biggest mammal in the Americas. They domesticate the land in order to attract wild animals. Wherever they roam, bison are the chief source of food and clothing, and of tools made from their bones. The bison thrive. By 1491, North America is home to perhaps 30 million. They reign on the prairies from Montana to Texas, pushed east by Native Americans along a path of fire, opening up forest into virgin land. The bison have gained a new habitat, far beyond their original range. Native Americans have neither guns nor horses. They have to hunt on foot. They dress in hides, and they hunt with the bow and arrow or the spear, all made of wood and leather, bone and stone. The bison hunt is essential for their survival. Over in Europe, hunting is not about survival. They hunt if they're noblemen, for sport, for pleasure and prestige. They have guns, but hunting is a ritual carried out with the weapons of a knight. And only the nobles are allowed to hunt. If ever they catch a peasant, he will be punished for poaching. Unlike in America, there's no room here for an abundance of wildlife, for endless herds. Wild animals are retreating into forests. In Europe, the land is man-made. Agriculture and cities push the wildlife back. Untamed land is now a rarity. But they have one other major food supply. Fish should be a cheap and abundant diet for every social class in Europe. Christianity, the common religion all over Europe in 1491, approves of fish. Eating meat is banned on more than 100 days a year. The demand for fish is huge. But there is a problem. Intensive agriculture is damaging the fish supplies. Europe's once unlimited supplies are dwindling fast. What happened to the fish stocks in Europe?
As people started to grow crops and cut back the wild woods, this released huge amounts of sediment into the watercourses, which changed them from being fast, clear-flowing rivers and streams into slow, turbid rivers and streams. And the freshwater fish found a problem with this, particularly migratory species that came up from the sea to spawn in rivers, animals like salmon and sturgeon. There was another factor which also cut down the supplies of these migratory fish, and that was that people started to build dams along rivers, and when that happened, the migration runs were blocked and the populations declined.
Once they had emptied and polluted their lakes and rivers, they turned to the sea. For the first time, they started intensive sea fishing. They found abundance on a scale never seen before. And they exploited it. Cod and herring from the North Sea were the first to be fished. Every 5 years, catches doubled. By 1300, thousands of tons of dried fish were exported from Norway to Britain alone.
In the Middle Ages, the seas of Europe were very little exploited until around the 11th century, when freshwater supplies declined. And people went to the sea for the first time and they discovered very large populations of fish, animals like cod and skates and halibut and turbot, and they were able to catch as much fish really as they wanted. For hundreds of years after that, all the way through to the 18th and 19th centuries, supplies of marine fish seemed inexhaustible within Europe, and we were able to obtain what we needed. But later on, towards the end of the 19th century, industrialized fishing began, and we saw supplies begin to be depleted.
But this is 1491. Europe's lakes and rivers are now empty and dirty. In the Americas, fishing is not an industry. They don't need it. Fish are for the taking. Their rivers are not used for power and are not affected by farming. Native Americans transport their fish far away from the coasts and waterways, into the interior, high up into the mountains. The Incas, high in the Andes, enjoy fish from the Pacific. The Mississippians trade with communities as far away as the Great Lakes to the north and the Gulf Coast to the south. They even eat fish and seafood from the Atlantic. Here too there is space for abundance. waters teem with fish and with whales, dolphins, and manatees. Wherever Native Americans trawl their nets, they find a bounty of thousands of different species. Menhaden, channel catfish, and sheephead. They never have to take more than nature can replace. North and South America look like a primitive paradise. But it's not that simple. The greatest numbers of fish live in the Amazon, the largest river in the Americas, and the most voluminous in the world. To our eyes, the Amazon rainforest is an almost untouched Garden of Eden. But it was once a very different place from what we know today. When the jungle was cleared in the 20th century for agriculture, they found the remains of a sophisticated civilization that once tamed this landscape. In 1491, this area is home to thousands of people. They tend orchards with all kinds of fruits, papaya, mango, cocoa, with nuts and palms. They speak many different languages and live in many different social systems. Their tightly packed settlements cover an area of 120,000 square kilometers. They're linked by raised causeways, bridges, and canals. Much of this is natural savanna created by annual flooding. But they have expanded the grasslands, regularly setting huge areas on fire. By 1491, they have created an ecosystem of plant species adapted by fire that cannot exist in nature. Eventually, the jungle will reclaim it. Further north in what is now New Mexico, it looks like no humans could ever have lived here. Today, it is one of the most arid zones on the continent. The Chaco Canyon. There is no vegetation, no water, and there are no animals to be seen. And it was already like this in 1491. But once, this area looked completely different. This is the story of a civilization that developed as far as it could, used its resources as well as it could, and still declined. More than 500 years ago, the Chaco Canyon was covered with lush vegetation and forests of pine and juniper. This fertile area was home to the Anasazi. From the year 700 on, the Anasazi built the highest and largest buildings in North America. One is several stories high and has 800 rooms that overlook the majestic canyon. 1,000 people lived here. They had no beasts of burden to transport materials. Thousands of felled trees were dragged down to the Chaco Canyon on men's bare backs. There is no account of their lives or of their disappearance. But environmental historians can tell us what happened. By counting tree rings and analyzing rat nests. Nathan English of the University of Arizona spends much time in the canyon looking for traces of the ancient nests.
Our interest in Chaco Canyon is to learn more about how the ancestral Puebloans live, and there's a number of ways we can do that. We can do that through traditional archaeology, where we dig up ruins and sites, or we can also look at what the environment was like around the ancestral Puebloans. And the way we do that is by looking at pack rat middens. And each pack rat midden is like a little snapshot in time of the area around the midden itself. So you could think of it like a picture. And the middens can be up to 40,000 years old in some places. And what the midden is it's the pack rat makes a nest, and it poops in that nest, and then it only gets its water from eating plant vegetation, so its urine is very thick and viscous. That urine seeps into the pile of poop essentially and solidifies, almost like amber. In the meantime, the pack rat is also collecting things, the plants around it, also pot shards, sometimes even corn or seeds of squash. And those macrofossils are incorporated into the midden. So we go out, we collect the midden, and then we examine the macrofossils in that midden to look at what the ecology around that midden was like at that time.
Not only do rat middens hold information, trees do too. Dendrochronologists count the rings of ancient logs to give the exact date when the very last tree was cut down for construction. The Anasazi used juniper and pine for their timber and to make fire. Too much of it, some think. With the trees goes the soil. The forest cannot recover. Because of erosion, water drains down, creating gullies on the way. Irrigation and agriculture are no longer possible. This large population cannot feed itself anymore. But did they destroy the forests? Or did the forests leave them?
So other scientists who've worked here have a couple of ideas of what happened to the woodlands that were around here while the ancestral Puebloans were living here. The first idea is that natural climate change caused the margin of the woodland to move further north and off-site. The second idea is that there were a lot of people living here and they over-harvested the wood. We are on the edge of this pinyon juniper woodland, and so it's really possible that just natural climate change would have caused it to move back. But it's also, we know that the people were harvesting wood for fuel and for timber, and so it's likely that a combination of the two things are what led to the loss of forest in this area.
The year 1130 rolls around. It's one of the driest of years. The Anasazi have survived previous droughts, but the population has increased greatly, and there's no suitable territory to expand into. Without rain, it's impossible to grow enough to support the population. No agriculture means no culture. The Chaco Canyon is abandoned. These ancient Americans cut down the last tree and moved on. Using Stone Age tools, they helped destroy the ecological balance of a whole region. It's a myth that Native Americans always lived in harmony with nature. Over in Europe, they're cutting down the forests too. But it's different for them. Their growing population needs more food and more space to grow it. And they badly need the wood. They have the tools. They have the transport. And they have the energy. But they're beginning to run out of space and time. Only wood can help them move forward. Wood has a special meaning in 1491.
The Middle Ages were the era of wood. You find it wherever you look. Wood was the most important material for building, for making tools and furniture, and for burning. It was the only fuel. There was hardly any coal.
It is an era of competition, and wars use up forests too. Whole armies are equipped with bows of yew wood. The yew tree is almost exterminated in Europe. Armies need iron weapons, and smelting ovens burn day and night, fueled with wood. At the same time, whole forests are used to satisfy another of their European cravings: for the great buildings of the age. The cathedrals in the cities are made of stone, yet they absorb millions of logs for their bases and frames. Larches are needed for roof supports. Solid logs of oak, alder, and elm are sunk into the ground to create foundations. Wood is indispensable for pillars and ceilings, posts and roof panels, axe handles, and cartwheels. European castles, cathedrals, monasteries, and churches consume entire forests in Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and England. But who owns the European forests? And who is making money with them?
Who the forests belonged to wasn't clear in the Middle Ages. No wonder that all the great social and economic struggles of those times were fought in the forests, around the forests, and about the forests. The nobles were mainly interested in the forests as hunting grounds. But for the peasants, the forests were vitally important. They couldn't live without them. They needed them to graze their cattle and as wood for fuel.
In this competition for timber, those who have money make the rules. And the money is now in the cities. The richest city of all is Venice. It's built on wood, literally. Piles sunk into the mud to create the platform on which the great stone facades can float. But behind all this is banking, interest, and capitalism. The goods that are bought and sold are transported in wooden galleons. Venice has denuded the forests round about to build its fleet. The city's demand is insatiable, and they start to deplete the Alps. Spruce for masts, larch for planking, elm for capstans, walnut for rudders, and most importantly, oak for hulls. When that is not enough, they cut a swathe across Europe, all the way from the Adriatic to the Baltic. The Europeans have exploited their natural resources, leaving a continent where there are no fish in their rivers and less timber in their forests. Their continent is crowded with people, and they don't know what to do with them. Nowhere else in the world are rivalries between princes and kings as intense, curiosity and greed as widespread, and religious fervor and business expertise as tightly wound as in Europe in 1491. And for the first time, the common people have a hunger for new ideas. The printing press is invented, books take hold, and literacy spreads. But where do they go from here? Where can all this raw energy be channeled? This is the time when European kings and queens send explorers beyond the horizon to expand and enhance their power. Some explorers go around Africa to find the sea route to Asia. One has the vision to sail west to arrive in the east. He is a seaman from Genoa, a fervent amateur who has the crazy idea of sailing into the unknown to reach India. Christopher Columbus has spent 5 years trying to persuade the one person who can finance his voyage. Isabella, Queen of Spain, finally agrees. What does the Spanish crown have to lose? It doesn't cost much to finance 3 ships. Spain has so much to gain from a shortcut to India: treasures, trade, and land. At first, no one wants to board his ship. Finally, he drags together a motley crew of 87 men, illiterates, petty criminals, even murderers, who choose probable death at sea in preference to the gallows. Many are soldiers with nothing to do since Spain expelled the Moors just months before. Now they're soldiers of fortune. With his band of desperados, Christopher Columbus sets sail from the port of Seville. It is the summer of 1492. He has promised the Queen and his crew that they will be in India in 6 weeks. Columbus is the one who discovers America, but it is the people who come after him and what they bring with them that will transform the New World.